students, welcome to today's class. This is Susmita welcoming you to Science with Susmita. Today we will discuss some new concepts of science. Come, let us start. During very ancient period, Indian as well as Greek philosophers, they had always wondered that what is that unknown substance of which every matter is made up of. And the idea of divisibility of matter was considered long back in India around 500 BC, when ancient Indian philosopher Maharishi Kannad, he said that if we go on breaking matter into smaller and smaller particles, then we will reach a condition when the particle can no longer be broken. And this ultimate stage, he called that these smallest particle, he named them as Parmanu. And another Indian philosopher, Pakuda Katayam, he elaborated this doctrine and he said that these particles normally exist in combined form because they are so small that they cannot exist independently, but they are always found in combined form. And around this same period, Greek philosophers Democritus and Leucippus also suggested the same thing, that when we go on dividing matter, it results into the formation of, or we reach into the smallest particle which can no more be divided further. And Democritus called these individual particles as atoms, where atoms mean indivisible. But all these findings were based on philosophical considerations and there was no valid experimental proof of this. So by the end of 18th century, scientists recognized the difference between elements and compounds and naturally became interested in finding out how and why elements combine and what happens when they combine. So finally, to prove that every matter is made up of smallest substance called atoms, scientists worked on it, and it was basically the work of Anton L. Lavoisier and Joseph L. Proust, who together gave the laws of chemical combination. They gave the laws of chemical combination, and these laws led to the final establishment of the fact that matter is made up of smallest substance called atoms. Okay, now what are these atoms and how they exist? For this they gave two laws under this, and these two laws are: number one, the law of conservation of mass, law of conservation of mass, and second one, law of constant proportion. Now let us understand what are these two laws. Now let us understand law of conservation of mass. Conservation means to preserve, to make it, to store it. So what does this law of conservation of mass state? The law of conservation of mass states that the mass before reaction is equal to mass after reaction. Means we can say during any chemical reaction, during any combination of substances chemically, there is no loss of mass. Okay. Now let us understand what is the meaning of this. Suppose for example we take two substances, say X and Y, and they join together. X is one element, any element say, and Y is an element, and we combine them together. Now for example, we started with 2.53 gram of X and we have say 1.45 gram of Y. And when they join together, we get a new substance XY. So what will be the mass of XY? The mass of XY will be a combination of this, means it will be 5 plus 3, 8, 9, it will be this. That means before reaction this was the mass and after reaction this is the mass. So there is no loss of mass. This is what the first law of chemical combination says, that is law of conservation of mass, that during any chemical reaction there is no loss of mass. The total mass before reaction is equal to the total mass after reaction. Now let me give you a small example from our daily life. Say for example, you take, say you want to make tea. Now you take water, you take milk, you take sugar, you take tea leaves. You take everything in some quantity. Let us forget about tea leaves because it is a solid substance. We have to throw away some of the substances. Let us just think about water, milk and sugar. And we mix them together and we boil. Now, suppose we take, say, sugar. We are taking sugar, we are taking water and we are taking milk. And we mix together and we heat it up. Okay. Now, suppose when we started, we take, say, 50 gram of milk, say 30 gram of water and 20 gram of sugar. Now, when we get the result of it, when we get the new substance after this combination, it should be 50, 80, 100. But suppose we get 92 gram. Okay, the resultant is 92 gram. Now you will say, you may say that it is not following the law of conservation of mass. It is not like that. Because when it is heating up, some of the substance is evaporating. It is going in nature. So that means how much has gone to nature, how much has evaporated, that is 8 gram has evaporated. Okay, so there is no loss of mass, only mass has been converted from one form to another. Now if the same thing we do in a closed container, airtight container, then you will get 100% here also. There will be no loss of mass. This is law of conservation of mass. Now let us understand the law of constant proportion. Constant, you know, fixed. Proportion means ratio. Okay. Now as the scientists, they established that atoms are the simplest particles, the smallest particle after which matter cannot be divided. And at the same time, they were also of the view that these atoms are so small that they cannot exist independently. They are so small that they are always found in combined state. Now the question arises, how do they combine? Can they combine in any way, or is there any particular rule, any law which is followed during this combination? Yes, it was studied and the fact was established that whenever two or more substances chemically combine together, they always combine in a constant proportion, in a fixed ratio, and this is called law of constant proportions. I am repeating, law of constant proportion states that when atoms combine together, they always combine in a fixed ratio. Let me give you one example. You all know the chemical formula of water is H2O. Now that means, what does this mean? It means two atoms of hydrogen are combining with one atom of oxygen to form one molecule of water. This is called molecule, one molecule of water. Okay, these are called atoms. This is atom of hydrogen. This is atom of oxygen. So atoms of hydrogen and oxygen combine to form molecule of water. Now what happens? They always combine in a fixed ratio by mass. Please remember. So what is the mass of hydrogen here? Here the mass of hydrogen is 1 gram plus 1 gram, that is 2 gram hydrogen. Okay, now how this 1 gram and 2 gram, that I will tell you later. And what is the mass of oxygen here? The mass of oxygen is 16 gram. Okay, so what is the ratio? The ratio is 2 by 16, that is 1 by 8, or we say 1:8. So from wherever you take water, whether you take water from pond, you take water from lake, you take water from sea, you take water from rain, you take water from any tap, every time if we test the ratio of oxygen and hydrogen in those water molecules, every time the ratio is 1:8. Let me give you another example. There is another compound called hydrogen peroxide and its formula is H2O2. So this H2O2 is not water, it is hydrogen peroxide. So what happens here? See, here two molecules of hydrogen combine with two atoms of hydrogen combined with two atoms of oxygen, and we are getting a new substance. That means what is happening? The moment ratio is changing, the compound is also changing. The substance formed is also changing. So what does the law state? Law states that whenever one element or atom combines with a second element or atom, they always do so in a fixed ratio, in a constant proportion. Okay, so this is the second law of chemical combination called the law of constant proportion. So students, I hope you have understood the topics that I have covered in this video. Until I come up with my next video, keep learning, enjoy learning. Thank you.